I've been a little harsh on the New York Jets this offseason, and I've been a bit too harsh on Sam Darnold. In 2020, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't see the Jets being a very good team, but just because I don't think the Jets are going to be good doesn't mean that Sam Darnold himself individually can't be great in 2020 and take a massive step forward. Darnold certainly has the skill set to prove me and many other doubters wrong. The funny thing is, we've become a little quiet when it comes to the Jets. We're talking about the Miami Dolphins offseason, Brian Flores and their potential. We're discussing the Bills and their awesome 2019 season with their epic trade for Stephon Diggs. And of course, more than anything else, now recently Cam Newton signing with the New England Patriots. But nobody is really talking about the Jets. And I think that's exactly how Sam Darnold and this football team want it and probably need it to be heading into this season. They are the underdogs, rightfully so. But should we be paying more attention to Sam Darnold and the Jets? I kind of think we should be. Remember that in 2019, just a season ago, this team went 7-9. Somehow went 7-9 with their franchise quarterback missing 3 games with mono, CJ Mosley getting injured early in the season, them having arguably the worst offensive line in football, arguably the worst set of receivers in the game, losing their starting tight end on the first season of a new head coach. I mean, the Jets overcame a ton, and for whatever reason, everybody is counting them out in 2020. And even if I don't think they're going to be all that great, even if I predict their record to be pretty bad, I'm not counting them out necessarily. The Jets were 0-3 without Sam Darnold in 2019. With Sam Darnold, they were 7-6. That's right. They had a winning record in 2019 with their starting quarterback. But because of that beginning of the season where everybody takes notes and then tunes out of the Jets games for the rest of the year, we forget that this team actually was above 500 with the quarterback that was actually supposed to start the season in the first place. And I'm not so sure that we should be counting out these Jets, and specifically Sam Darnold. That's why in this video, I'm giving you the positives with the 2020 Jets, and I'm going to explain why 2020 could be Sam Darnold's season. Before I give you my reasoning for why this 2020 could be Sam Darnold's breakout season, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and comment below your opinion. Let me know in the comment section below whether you're a Jets fan or not a Jets fan, what you think of Sam Darnold right now, what you think he can be in the future, and your prediction for the Jets as a team in 2020. 23. Sam Darnold just turned 23 years old. 23 years old is younger than me. Sam Darnold is a year younger than me. Sam Darnold is younger than Joe Burrow. At 23, Sam Darnold has had 26 career professional games, professional starts, and he's about to enter his second season in Adam Gase's offense. 2020 did not showcase the flashy numbers that some other quarterbacks had, but in 2019, the one thing that you can credit Sam Darnold for is that he showed he could win at the NFL level. And it's honestly just very simple. The difference between a Sam Darnold Jets team a year ago and a Sam Darnold-less Jets team a year ago. The impact of this player, it's obvious. Just take a look at simple statistics. Without Darnold, the Jets scored 3 points, 14 points, and 6 points, totaling 23 points in 3 games. They averaged 7 points, nearly 8 points per game without Sam Darnold. Now you add Sam Darnold to that same offense, and the Jets averaged 19.5 points a game. That's nearly 2 touchdowns more than what they were doing offensively with the same scheme, just a different quarterback. Same talent, just a different quarterback. With Sam Darnold, they were 2 touchdowns better. Darnold went 6-2 down the stretch. 6-2 down the stretch. The last half of the season, the very quiet 6-2. The same team that was outscored by 61 points in the 3 games without Darnold. So what makes Sam enticing to me? Well, let's start off with the talent. When you compare him to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in his own draft class, I don't think he's as physically talented as either one. It would be tough to be as physically talented as Lamar Jackson as a runner, and definitely very difficult to be as talented as Josh Allen in terms of his arm. I mean, that's the strongest arm in football, in my opinion. But Sam Darnold does have some strengths to his game that I would argue is better than Josh Allen, is better than Lamar Jackson in certain areas. Sam Darnold is fantastic at maneuvering within the pocket, going up, stepping up into a throw, throwing off an awkward platform while doing so, avoiding pressure, and he's had plenty of practice at trying to avoid these rushers because he's always under pressure. Number 2, he has phenomenal short and mid accuracy. Short and intermediate accuracy, Sam Darnold is more accurate than those 2 guys. I think he puts a nice touch on the football, and I do think that his release is very smooth and quick. I think the way that he can maneuver his arm and arm angles is impressive, especially from awkward angles with his feet. Now, is he a perfect prospect? Are there things that he could fix? Certainly, with any young quarterback. But Sam Darnold, I think we can't overlook that this guy does possess talent. Just because he can't run as fast as Lamar and can't throw just pure arm strength the way Allen can, doesn't mean he doesn't have talent. And then you go to the numbers, the stats. The improvement from year 1 to year 2 was pretty drastic when you consider that in year 2, his numbers across the board, whether you look at completion percentage, yards, touchdowns, less interceptions, a better passer rating, across the board with arguably worse receivers, or at least the same, he had better numbers across the board. Of course, we already noted that he had a better record as a starter, and that definitely counts. And last year, we also have to take into account that he lost his 3rd receiver in Quincy Enunwa during the year. He lost his starting tight end in Chris Herndon during the season. Those 2 things are huge, and he was still able to overcome that and put up solid numbers, along with having a terrible offensive line. Now, what are the improvements that the Jets made that make me believe that Darnold could have a breakout season? Well, I do think that they upgraded at receiver. Yes, they lost Robbie Anderson, but I think that they added more upside to the receiver position. And that upside starts with their 2nd round pick in Denzel Mims, who's standing at 6'3" with blazing speed, has a skill set that can be a dynamic outside target for Sam Darnold, and can do a lot of the same things as Robbie Anderson, but I would argue that Mims can actually go up there and win contested footballs. And as long as Darnold is willing to give him opportunities to make plays, I think that Mims can be something special given the time. Of course, he still has his favorite target, the slot receiver Jamison Crowder, who was added last season, but when you look at his per game statistics with Sam Darnold at quarterback, the guy was an absolute reception machine. He is one of the most underrated slot receivers in the game, extraordinary at short and intermediate route running, and just knows how to separate and get open. They signed a receiver in Brashad Perryman, who was a former 1st round pick, and I think people are sleeping on a little bit going into this year, because if you go back and watch him in Tampa at the end of last year, according to PFF, he was extraordinary. He was awesome, right? He was the 2nd highest graded receiver over the last half of the season, only behind A.J. Brown, who was having like a historic half of the season for the Titans. He also, according to PFF, only dropped just 1 pass on 65 targets in 2019. Perryman was a guy that showed flashes with his speed, showed flashes with big play ability early in his career, but could never stay healthy. And all of a sudden he goes to Tampa, Godwin goes down, Evans goes down. He steps up and actually plays as a legit number one receiver. And I think he can be just as good as what they had in Robbie Anderson. And according to PFF, he actually graded better than Robbie Anderson a year ago and can add more explosive big plays to this offense. So you have Jamison Crowder from short and intermediate. You have Perryman and Mims on the outside creating big plays in different ways. Mims more contested, Perryman more with speed. And you have something very interesting here. You also throw in a young kid like Braxton Berrios, who I've always been high on, being a Patriots fan, initially drafted by New England. Couldn't work in New England, went to New York, and has a little bit of flair as a punt returner, but also a backup slot receiver that I think could be a solid number 4 receiver. And then you look at the tight ends, and perhaps the most slept on pair of tight ends in the league is Chris Herndon. Showed elite potential in his rookie season. And then Ryan Griffin. I mean, Ryan Griffin was awesome. Just look at his numbers last year when he played. He could do just about everything within this Jets offense, from taking a screen and breaking a tackle to being that red zone presence that Darnold really needed at the end of the season. Moving up front, they upgraded their offensive line a ton. I have to give the Jets a lot of credit for upgrading their offensive line, and pretty much 4 out of 5 of the positions have been flipped, have been changed for the better. Darnold was pressured on 42% of his snaps in 2019. I don't think that's going to be the case in 2020. He's going to have more time to make plays, and with his ability within the pocket, as I noted, that's going to allow the offensive line more time to block and him to find those receivers down the field. At left tackle, they drafted a stud in the first round, Becton, who's arguably the most athletic tackle in the draft. Then they brought in a center who graded in the top 10 by PFF in 2019 in Connor McGovern of the Denver Broncos, who had an 82.5 pass block grade, which was the 5th best in the league a year ago. That's huge for protecting Darnold. Also, a veteran center can be useful for helping your quarterback in protection. Right guard Greg Van Roten was actually really good last year for the Panthers, ranking 25th by PFF. Another guy with a good pass block grade, 74.3, which was 20th in the league. They brought in George Fant from the Seahawks, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he could be just as good as what they had, if not better, is younger and more athletic, ranking 56th. Let's be honest, Joe Douglas, coming from the Eagles, he has kind of a history with the Eagles. They've been good at finding offensive linemen, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. And then at left guard, it's pretty much of a battle between Brian Winters, Alex Lewis. I probably lean Alex Lewis there, but either way, you have a solid starter at one of the guard spots. And I also love that they didn't necessarily get rid of the other players. Yes, they lost Brandon Shell. Yes, they lost Ryan Khalil. But Jonathan Harrison is still there in case you need a backup center. And, he's probably a solid backup center, ranking 34th a year ago, even as the starter. So the Jets, I think, have better offensive line depth, better offensive line starters, and a lot more potential. What does an offensive line do outside of just protecting a quarterback? As I noted, they added 3 really good pass protectors this offseason. It opens up the run game. The Jets' running game last year was dreadful. I probably think it was the worst in the league. It's between them and Miami, for sure. The Jets were 31st in yards, they were 31st in rushing touchdowns, and they were 32nd in yards per attempt in 2019. That is dreadful. You have terrible pass blocking up front. You can't run the ball, and your receivers aren't the best in the world. How is a quarterback going to succeed with that? You have to give Darnold the credit, especially for a second-year quarterback. A lot of times in the NFL, the reason we say that the running back position is interchangeable is because the offensive line, the strength of the offensive line, often dictates how great a running back is. There are only a few running backs in the league that can actually be successful with a bad offensive line. Very, very few, especially in the modern NFL, with defenses understanding and years of schemes to try and stop rushing attacks. Le'Veon Bell is not that guy. He needs some run blocking up front to be able to be at his best, because he's at his best when he can be patient as a runner. Le'Veon Bell had a 3.2 yards per carry a year ago. I expect his rust to be off. He was off of football for a year. I think he's going to be better in both regards, as a receiver and as a rusher. That's going to help your young quarterback succeed in year 3. I'm being honest when I say that I don't think the Jets are going to be a very good team in 2020. But I do see what Jet truthers are saying, what Jets fans are pointing out. I understand why you may be high on this team. I understand why you may predict them to do big things. But I just want to let you know, I'm not sleeping on Sam Darnold. I feel like even if the Jets suck, he is going to be better this year because the team around him is better. He's going to put up better numbers, and he's going to show you why he can be a franchise quarterback. And while I may never believe that Sam Darnold will be the best quarterback in the NFL, a top 5 guy, or maybe even top 10, I certainly think he's a guy you can win with. I certainly think he's a guy that can have a lot of success in this league and be the Jets' best quarterback since, I don't know, a long time. 2020, it's going to be a huge step in the right direction for the future of this franchise, even if this season is unsuccessful. And this is the season that I believe Sam Darnold could prove his doubters wrong, including me. If you enjoyed this video, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the channel for more NFL topics just like this. It's Mitch of The Bottom Line View. Thanks for watching. Peace.